Miguel Santos stood alone at the center of the massive America's Got Talent stage, the bright lights almost too heavy for his young eyes. At just 14 years old, he looked small against the towering screens and roaring crowd, yet there was a quiet strength in the way he held himself. In his hands was a worn rosary, its beads smooth from years of prayer. His fingers clutched it tightly, as if it were the only thing anchoring him to courage. When asked his name and where he came from, his voice was soft but clear. Miguel Santos Pa. From Quezon City, Philippines. A gentle murmur rippled through the audience. Simon Cowell leaned forward and asked why he chose to audition. Miguel swallowed hard. For a moment, it seemed like the words were too heavy to leave his chest. Then he began to speak, slowly at first, as though reliving every memory. He shared that his parents were overseas Filipino workers who left the country years ago to provide a better life for him. Like many Filipino families, their love was measured in sacrifices, video calls, and promises of coming home. But one promise was never fulfilled. His parents were involved in a tragic accident abroad and never returned. As Miguel spoke, the theater grew completely silent. He explained how his world changed overnight. He was sent to live with his grandmother in Manila, a small home filled with framed photos of smiling parents who felt both near and impossibly far. Nights were the hardest. He remembered lying awake, listening to the sound of jeepneys outside, whispering prayers he barely understood back then. He questioned God, cried quietly so his Lola wouldn't hear, and wondered why love could hurt so deeply. Music, he said, became his refuge. Every Sunday, he sat in the back of their local church, listening to hymns that spoke of hope, healing, and eternal love. Singing was the only time he felt close to his parents again. When he sang, it felt like they were listening somewhere, proud and present. His grandmother noticed that singing eased his pain, so she encouraged him to sing whenever his heart felt heavy. Miguel admitted he never imagined standing on a stage like this. He came not to chase fame, but to honor the people who gave everything for him. His voice cracked as he said he would sing to Jesus, because faith was what carried him through the loneliness, and because he believed his parents were finally at peace. Tears welled in the eyes of audience members, and even the judges looked visibly moved. Before beginning, Miguel took a deep breath and looked upward, clutching the rosary one last time. In that moment, he was no longer just a boy on a talent show stage. He was a son, a believer, and a child offering his pain, love, and hope through song. The room held its breath, sensing that what was about to happen was more than a performance, it was a prayer. Miguel closed his eyes as the first note escaped his lips, soft and almost fragile, like a whisper carried by faith. The theater, moments ago filled with murmurs and shifting seats, fell into a deep, reverent silence. His voice did not rush. It moved slowly, carefully, as if every word needed to be felt before it was heard. The melody of the Filipino gospel song flowed gently, and with each line, Miguel seemed to pour pieces of his soul into the music. As he sang, the pain he had held inside for years surfaced, not in cries, but in control, in restraint, in the quiet strength of someone who had learned to endure loss too early. His voice trembled at first, not from fear, but from emotion. Yet as the song continued, something changed. The trembling gave way to clarity, and the small boy standing on the stage suddenly sounded far bigger than his years. His voice carried longing, devotion, and an unspoken conversation with God. The lyrics spoke of surrender and trust, of placing one's heart in Jesus' hands. Miguel lifted his head slightly, eyes still closed, as if imagining his parents listening from somewhere beyond the lights. His hands loosened from the rosary, resting gently at his sides, and his voice grew stronger. Each note echoed through the hall, wrapping the audience in a shared moment of grief and hope. Some people clasped their hands together. Others wiped tears they hadn't expected to shed. The judges sat frozen. Heidi's eyes glistened. Sophia pressed her hand against her chest. Howie stared at Miguel, unmoving, as if afraid that any reaction might break the spell. Even Simon Cowell, known for his critical gaze, remained silent, his expression unreadable but deeply focused. This was not a performance built on vocal tricks or dramatic runs. It was raw, honest, and painfully sincere. As the song reached its peak, Miguel's voice cracked, not a flaw, but a fracture that revealed everything he had been holding back. The sound carried years of unanswered prayers, lonely nights, and a child's attempt to understand loss. Instead of stopping, he leaned into that brokenness, letting it shape the final lines of the song. The audience could feel it. This was not just about talent. This was about survival. When the final note faded, Miguel remained still, head bowed, breathing deeply. For a split second, there was silence, thick, heavy, and sacred. Then the theater erupted. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation, applause crashing like waves. Some people openly cried. Others shouted his name. Miguel looked up, stunned, tears streaming down his face as he tried to understand what was happening. He placed his hand over his heart and whispered a quiet, "Salamat pa." In that moment, it was clear that the stage had become more than a place for competition. It had become an altar of faith, memory, and healing. Miguel didn't just sing a song. He offered a prayer, and everyone in the room felt it. The applause continued long after Miguel's final note faded, rolling through the theater like thunder that refused to stop. Miguel stood frozen, his eyes wide, tears tracing lines down his cheeks as he tried to process the overwhelming sound. He bowed his head instinctively, the way he did after every prayer, as if this moment, too, was something sacred. When the clapping finally softened, Simon Cowell was the first to speak. Simon leaned forward, resting his hands together, his voice unusually calm. He looked directly at Miguel, not as a judge evaluating a contestant, but as someone genuinely affected. He admitted that he had heard thousands of singers on that stage, many with powerful voices and perfect technique, but what Miguel brought was something far rarer. He said that from the very first note, it was clear Miguel wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't chasing applause. He was singing because he needed to, because the song was carrying emotions too heavy to keep inside. Simon explained that pain often either breaks people or shapes them, and in Miguel's case, it had shaped honesty. Every crack in his voice told a story. Every breath felt real. Simon paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully, then said that Miguel reminded everyone why music matters, because it gives voice to feelings that words alone can't carry. The audience grew quiet again, listening closely. Heidi Klum spoke next, her voice trembling as she told Miguel that his performance made her forget where she was. She said it felt like being inside a church, surrounded by faith and love, and that his parents would be incredibly proud. Sofia Vergara wiped away tears and told him that his heart was louder than any microphone on that stage. Howie Mandel added that Miguel didn't just sing to the audience. He connected them all in one shared emotion. When it was time to vote, the answers came without hesitation. One by one, the judges said yes, their voices confident and warm. When Simon gave his vote, he smiled softly and said yes as well, adding that Miguel had something special that couldn't be taught. The crowd erupted again as the results sank in. Miguel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed, clutching his rosary as he whispered a prayer of thanks. He looked up toward the ceiling lights, imagining his parents smiling, listening, finally hearing him. In that moment, the stage no longer felt intimidating. It felt like home. As Miguel walked off stage, still shaking, one thing was clear to everyone watching: this was not just the beginning of a journey on a talent show. It was the moment a boy's grief turned into hope, and his faith turned into a voice that could move the world.